Sam Carter had been riding for days through the dry, open land, the sun beating down on him as his horse trotted across the vast desert. He wasn't a man of many words and even fewer friends, but he had his reasons for coming to this part of the country. It wasn't an ordinary visit. It was a search. Sam had heard whispers of a long-lost family heirloom that had been stolen years ago, and it had been hidden deep within Apache territory. The journey had taken him far from the life he once knew, but something told him that the item was close, hidden somewhere in this land. As he approached the outskirts of Apache land, his senses sharpened. He could feel the eyes watching him from every direction, and he knew that by entering this territory, he was risking more than just his life. The Apache tribe, known for their fierce pride and protection of their land, would not take kindly to outsiders wandering in their midst. Sam knew that the Apache people held deep grudges against outsiders, especially after decades of conflict with settlers and soldiers. He wasn't here to bring harm, though. He was here to find something important, something his father had left behind. But Sam was aware that even his best intentions might not save him from the wrath of the Apache. As the sun began to set, Sam noticed the shadows of figures in the distance. His horse slowed to a trot as he neared what appeared to be a gathering. Several Apache warriors stood in the circle, their eyes narrowing as they caught sight of Sam. There was no welcoming gesture, no sign of respect for a fellow traveler. Instead, the warriors moved quickly, surrounding him with a quiet but obvious sense of hostility. Sam's heart pounded in his chest as he realized that his presence had already been noted. His instincts told him to turn around and leave, but it was too late for that. Without warning, the warriors grabbed Sam by the arms and tied him to a post. He could hear their murmurs and see the hardened faces staring at him with judgment. Sam kept his head low, not daring to make eye contact with the warriors. He knew that if he was going to survive this, he would need to stay calm. The warriors looked at each other, whispering in their native tongue as they debated what to do with the stranger who had dared to step foot on their land. They had seen his kind before, wandering settlers who thought they could take whatever they wanted from the land without consequence. But this cowboy seemed different. There was something in his eyes, a sense of determination that didn't fit the usual mold of a thief or a threat. Sam couldn't help but wonder why he was being treated this way. What had they heard about him? He wasn't a lawman nor a soldier. He had no reputation to speak of, and yet he was being judged as though he had already committed some great crime. The truth was, Sam had nothing to prove to them, but it seemed the Apache people had already made up their minds. After what felt like hours, the chief arrived. His presence was commanding. The older man's face, weathered by years of hardship, held a look of authority that made even the warriors stand straighter. Sam met his eyes for the first time, and he felt a mix of unease and respect. The chief's name was Taji, a name that carried weight in Apache legend. He had fought in countless battles and had seen the death of many of his people. Taji was known for his wisdom, his loyalty to his tribe, and his unrelenting desire to protect his land at all costs. When Taji spoke, everyone listened. He stepped forward, and the warriors immediately parted, allowing him access to the center of the gathering. His eyes narrowed as he looked Sam up and down, his gaze calculating. Taji motioned for the cowboys to release Sam's bonds, and they complied reluctantly. Sam stood tall, though his legs were stiff from being tied for so long. "Why are you here?" Taji asked, his voice low and commanding. Sam hesitated. He wasn't used to being interrogated, especially not by someone with the power to make decisions about his life. But something about Taji's voice made Sam feel as though he needed to be truthful. "I'm looking for something," Sam said, his voice steady but cautious. "An heirloom, my father's. It was taken from us long ago, and I've come to find it." Taji listened, his face impassive as Sam spoke. There was no sign of sympathy in the chief's eyes, only a quiet suspicion. The tribe had suffered greatly over the years, and Sam understood that their mistrust of outsiders ran deep. He knew that words alone wouldn't change their opinion of him. "I'm not here to harm you," Sam added quickly. "I came only for what was stolen." The chief considered his words carefully and then nodded to one of his warriors. The man stepped forward, his hand outstretched. It was clear that Sam was to follow, but where he was being taken he wasn't sure. He glanced back at Taji, who had yet to say anything more. The journey through the Apache camp was silent. Sam noticed the wary stares of the men and women around him, but no one spoke. It was a quiet tension, thick in the air, as if every movement was being observed. The warriors led him to the center of the camp where the elders were gathered. There, they would decide what to do with Sam. As Sam stood in front of the tribal council, the weight of the situation began to sink in. He was no longer just a man looking for a lost artifact. He was standing before a people who had suffered much and who had every reason to distrust anyone who wasn't one of their own. He knew the tribe would judge him, but he wasn't prepared for what came next. Suddenly, a voice broke through the crowd. It was Naya, the chief's daughter. She was young, with long dark hair that shimmered in the firelight. She had been watching Sam quietly from the sidelines, and now she stepped forward. Her eyes were not filled with the same suspicion as the others. Instead, they held something else, something more understanding. "I know who he is," Naya said, her voice carrying across the crowd. The words were simple, but they stopped everyone in their tracks. Even Taji's stern face softened slightly, though his eyes still searched for the truth. Naya continued, explaining that Sam was the son of a man who had once helped the Apache tribe. He wasn't a stranger to them, after all. Sam's father had been an ally of the Apache years before, a man who had fought alongside them in times of trouble. The tribe fell silent at this revelation. Sam's heart raced as he looked at Naya. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had never been told of his father's connection to the Apache. But here was someone who not only knew the truth, but had the courage to speak it in front of the entire tribe. For the first time since he had arrived, Sam felt a small glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could change everything. But what would it mean for him? Would the tribe accept him because of his father's past? Or would they still see him as an outsider, a threat? The judgment of the Apache people had been turned upside down with just a few words. But Sam knew this was only the beginning of what would be a long and difficult journey to prove himself. ChatGPT said, the air in the Apache camp had shifted and Sam could feel it as he stood before the tribal council. The words spoken by Naya had changed everything. What had started as a tense confrontation was now a quiet, thoughtful moment where the tribe seemed to reconsider their stance on him. But Sam knew the real test was still ahead. This was just the beginning, and he would have to prove more than just his lineage. The Apache weren't easily swayed, and their trust was something earned, not given away. Taji, the chief, stood silently for a long while after Naya spoke, his eyes never leaving Sam. There was a deep weight to his gaze, a look that could pierce right through a man, and Sam felt it. The tribe's fate had always been in the chief's hands, and now Sam's future rested there too. The silence stretched on longer than Sam had hoped, and he had to fight the urge to speak, to explain more, but he knew better than to interrupt the chief. Finally, Taji broke the silence, his voice steady and strong as always. "Your father was a friend to our people," he said. "But you are not him. You must show us who you are. Words alone cannot change what we see in you. You will go with my warriors to retrieve something sacred to our people. If you prove yourself worthy, you may leave here with your life and with whatever you came for." The chief's words were clear, and they were a challenge. Sam didn't flinch. He was used to challenges, used to long journeys and difficult tasks. He nodded without hesitation. He understood. If he was going to prove himself, this was the way. Naya stood beside her father, her gaze not on Sam but on the chief. There was something in her eyes that Sam couldn't quite read. Was it hope? Was it concern? Whatever it was, he couldn't afford to dwell on it now. The mission ahead was more important. The warriors gathered quickly, their voices low as they prepared for the journey. Sam followed them, still not entirely sure what was expected of him, but he had little choice. He had to prove that he wasn't just some outsider or intruder. He had to show that he understood what it meant to stand with the Apache, even if he had never truly understood their pain before. As they traveled through the desert, the warriors barely spoke, their movements precise and careful. Sam kept his distance, but he couldn't help but notice the way they moved in harmony, the way they communicated with no words at all. It was clear that these people were part of something much larger than just their individual selves. They were a united force tied together by blood and history. Sam began to understand the weight of what Taji had said. To be one of them meant understanding that history, that bond. It meant showing respect, showing that he was part of something bigger than himself. After several days of travel, the group arrived at the base of a mountain. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the rocky landscape. The warriors set up camp at the foot of the mountain, preparing for the task ahead. Sam watched them work in silence, still unsure of what was coming. He wasn't a stranger to tough situations, but this one felt different. There was something about the mountain, something ancient in the air that made the place feel sacred. "We go to the peak at dawn," one of the warriors told Sam. "The sacred artifact is hidden there. Only those worthy can touch it." Sam nodded. He had no idea what the artifact was or why it held such importance, but he knew he had to get to the top of that mountain. As the night fell, he lay in his bedroll, staring at the stars above, his mind racing with thoughts of what was to come. At dawn, the warriors led Sam up the steep slopes of the mountain. The air was thin and Sam's breath came in ragged gasps, but he pressed on. He couldn't afford to falter now. He had to prove that he was capable, that he was more than just the son of a man who had once helped the Apache. As they neared the summit, Sam saw a small cave carved into the rock. Inside there was an altar of sorts, and atop it a bundle wrapped in cloth. The warrior stepped back and Sam approached it slowly, his hands trembling slightly as he reached out to touch the artifact. The moment his fingers brushed the cloth, a sharp pain shot through his chest like an electric jolt. He gasped, stumbling backward, but the warriors didn't move. They stood in silence, their eyes watching him closely. Sam fought to steady himself, to understand what had just happened. It wasn't just the artifact that had caused the pain. It was something deeper, something spiritual. "This is no ordinary item," one of the warriors said quietly. "It is the spirit of our ancestors. It chooses who is worthy." Sam could feel it now. The weight of the artifact wasn't just physical. It was emotional, spiritual. He wasn't sure what it meant, but he could feel the connection to the land, to the people. It was as if the very earth beneath his feet was alive, and it was speaking to him, telling him that he was more than just a man on a mission. He was part of a greater story, one that stretched back for generations. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, unable to move, but slowly he began to understand. This journey wasn't just about finding an object or proving himself to the tribe. It was about understanding the Apache, understanding their pain, their history, and their connection to the land. It was about respecting what they had fought for and showing that he too could be a part of that fight. Finally, after what seemed like hours, Sam stepped back, his breath steadying. The warriors watched him closely, their expressions unreadable. But Sam knew something had changed. He had touched the artifact and he had felt its power. He wasn't just Sam Carter anymore. He was part of something greater, something that connected him to a people he had never truly understood before. As the warriors began their descent, Sam knew that his life would never be the same. The path ahead was still unclear, but one thing was certain. He had passed the test. He had shown the Apache that he was worthy, not just of their trust, but of their respect. When they returned to the tribe, Taji was waiting for them. His eyes softened slightly when he saw Sam, and he gave a small nod of approval. Naya was there too, watching Sam with a quiet intensity. "You have proven yourself," Taji said. "But it is not just the artifact that proves you. It is your heart." Sam nodded, grateful but uncertain of what lay ahead. He had earned the tribe's respect. But what about his own future? What about the mission that had brought him here in the first place? He had come for the heirloom. But now he realized that there was so much more at stake. The journey had changed him in ways he couldn't yet understand. But as he looked at Naya, standing beside her father, he knew that the Apache tribe had given him something far greater than he had ever expected. A chance to truly belong.